The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. We broadcast from Nairobi, 94.4. We're in Mombasa, 87.9. If you're listening to us in Kisumu, you're on 102.5. Nakuru and the environs, 96.0. And this signal actually goes pretty far and wide. It also in Nakuru, in Naivasha, all the way to Narok, in some parts of Narok, and it goes quite far. 90.9 in Nyeri, 96.7 in Eldoret, 97.7 in Malindi. Live streaming the show as we always do every morning. Spice FM KE Facebook. Spice FM KE is our YouTube channel. At Spice FM KE, we are live streaming on Twitter as well. And our hashtag is the Situation Room. Log on to our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. In the studio this morning, in the Situation Room, we have Nduoko, CT Muga. My name is Eric Latif. We'll soon be joined on the hot seat by the Deputy Commissioner of the Kenya Revenue Authority in charge of policy and tax advisory. We'll be talking about the new tax. This new tax. When the president was asked about it the other day when he was speaking in Mombasa, and he was told, so you have heeded to the calls and the cries of the people when it comes to NHIF. Why don't you do the same thing about the new tax called the turnover tax that's targeting the small taxpayers? He said, you know what? It's a duty and also it's a patriotic responsibility of every citizen to pay tax. So this is one way of ensuring that we widen our tax bracket and we make small traders pay tax by submitting 3% of their annual turnover, every month to KRA. Now, KRA has also been going on a blitz explaining who is this small trader. Small trader is a company that is not that makes less than 5 million shillings a year. A small trader is a company that is not registered for VAT. A small trader is a company that is not registered as a limited liability company. Those are small traders. We're talking about salons, we're talking about mama mboga, we're talking about hawkers, we're talking about people who run small retail shops, kiosks. Those are people who are supposed to be paying this 3% tax every month. Now, of course, questions arise. How do I do this? You go through the iTax system. So you log on to the internet, go to iTax. You register yourself for this tax. Then you start submitting the tax. This is where the questions start emerging for people. How am I going to do this? And how often am I going to do this? Yeah, so it becomes a very tricky issue here.
Well, of course, the questions have come up in terms of then why at this time? And of course, is there a race to the finish line, as it were, in terms of the shillings that need to be collected? And then who sits in the place in terms of victims when it comes to how much more they have to pay out of pocket? Of course, those questions have been raised and quite significantly so by those who would bear the brunt of all of this and, of course, cannot be ignored.
They cannot and they shouldn't be ignored. I mean, this is something that people talk about all the time, that, people require to start paying tax and all. And we're joined now in the studio by Caxton Masudi. He is the Deputy Commissioner of KRA in charge of policy and tax advisory. Caxton, good morning.
Good morning.
Asante sana for coming.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for inviting me.
Yes. We are talking about something that is in everybody's, view and sphere. People knew that from the 1st of January this year, KRA started implementing and rolling out this new tax, the turnover tax. This is a time when people are losing jobs. This is a time when people don't have money in their pockets. By the admission of the president himself, people don't have money in their pockets. People are struggling to start small businesses so that they can survive and be able to feed their families and live a decent life. Then KRA, you come in and implement this. Everybody's question was, really? What is KRA thinking? So, what is KRA thinking, Caxton?
First and foremost, you need to appreciate that KRA implements laws passed by Parliament. So this tax is not a KRA tax. This is a tax that has been introduced by Parliament for Kenyans to contribute to national development. As you may appreciate, that it is very critical that this economy takes off. And for it to take off, it requires investments. And as it were, investments by government comes from taxes and resources given to the government by Kenyans or citizens or residents of Kenya. So this is probably the right time for Kenyans to pick up and contribute taxes, especially the sections of the Kenyan community that have not been contributing to government funding.
Why were they not contributing previously? Why? Because we keep hearing that this informal sector, as it were, is the largest driver already of the Kenyan economy. So there's money coming in from this sector that is being ejected into the economy, either way, with or without tax. That has been happening. So why then were they not contributing before into the kitty? Why was that not happening before?
It is largely because of the nature of this sector of our economy. Because what happens is that these are small business people who are earning less than 5 million in a year. And the most critical thing is that for this sector to contribute, they have always appealed to government to give them a tax that is convenient. Because you need to appreciate that for you to file the normal income taxes, you need to keep records, you need to have services of auditors, services of accountants, so that they can help you prepare the books and file the returns.
Yep.
Now, this group, this sector of our economy have always been requesting that since they do not have the capacity to, get this kind of services and pay for them, they needed a convenient tax that is simple, that can be paid on the go, and this is why the turnover tax was introduced.
So they asked for it. Is that what we're saying? The people
Yes.
asked for this.
Every time, we have asked them to pay taxes, they have been saying it is complicated. Yes, because they say we want to pay, but we don't know how to
surely, how are we
prepare the
gonna pay
books of
this?
accounts. We want to pay. We don't know who should advise us. And in any case, even if they wanted to get services of accountants and auditors, probably there would be enough of them to help them. Please note that this is about 2.4 million residents that fall under this category.
Yeah. So assuming that you've responded to their request and said, we understand your lack of capacity, how has this 3% tax addressed that in terms of how they're supposed to pay and to become compliant?
Now, turnover tax is a simple tax. All you need to know is the total sales that you've had in a period. Because if your total sales is 100,000, for example, you only need to pay 3,000. You don't need any accounting, you don't need any auditor, you don't need any other service.
I don't need any proof. Because this is where KRA guys are going to come and tell me, how do we know?
Yeah.
No,
And then
but
it
Eric,
becomes...
when you sell something, if you're talking about sales, there's something called a receipt.
No, there isn't. When you
Hold
go
it.
to Mamamboga,
Hold it.
There's no receipting.
Hold it. There is a receipt. It's whether they provide it,
or not.
yes. But how do they, for instance, account for what they have, what they sell, what they make? There has to be a process that they follow. They also do their own accounting.
Obviously.
Yes. Now, why am I saying this? Remember, there was this discussion about, say, matatus, all right? And the issue of, do matatus actually have receipts? They do. If you ask for a receipt, they will give you a receipt. All I'm saying is that there's an accounting process that takes place. You may not ask for it, but it does. And they themselves cannot conduct that business unless they have some process by which they account for what they do.
Of course, they have some basic bookkeeping. I'm just thinking about, somebody who sells mbogas, the mama mboga. They have basic bookkeeping. They know this is how much I bought in the morning. This is how much I've sold in the evening. They know that, right? Some of them will write it down. Others will keep it in their head, right?
Sure.
Now, KRA will come and say, give me 3% of what you've sold. If I say that I sold 100 shillings today, and yet I sold 1,000 shillings, there comes the conflict between me and KRA.
No, let's ask KRA.
So how
do you-
is
well,
KRA
how they
going
would
to
go
do
about
this?
it.
How do you
Yes.
ascertain?
First, I want to say this, that Kenyans pay taxes without serious prodding. And probably just for statistics purposes, over 90% of all the revenue collected by Kenya Revenue Authority is voluntary assessment. people go into the system, declare their taxes, and pay.
In some cases, they're afraid that there'll be punitive measures if they don't.
Now, we also believe that for this category, because they are also Kenyans, like those that have been paying.
Yeah.
Now that they have been enabled to pay, we expect over 90% of all the business people in this category to pay their taxes without prodding. However, we have put into place support services so that these people understand their responsibilities, their obligations, and also appreciate how they will go about paying their taxes. And we believe that with this, we will have a very small percentage of those who may not comply.
Did you hear the hue and cry? It must have fallen on KRA ears after this announcement was made. Did you hear the sentiment that came from the same people in the informal sector about the introduction of this tax?
Yes, we of course have had concerns raised in this sector, but I think they are unfounded. We have been meeting representatives from this sector. You know, they also have associations.
Yep.
We've been meeting their representatives, and we've been discussing with them how they would want us to implement this tax. And they have given us their feedback. One, they say they do not want to leave their businesses to come and pay taxes.
Yep.
They want to pay their taxes wherever they are at the time that is convenient to them. And we as KRA have responded and have now are in the process of rolling out a mobile application that will enable Kenyans in this sector to pay their taxes using mobile payment platforms.
So it's going to be simplified.
Very simplified.
But this is not going to happen this month, because this month's returns should be paid by Monday, the 20th, right?
No. The tax became effective on 1st of January.
So it's for the next month.
So it is for the next month. It
So
will become effective by the 20th of February.
This information that you are now giving us, would you say that this is information that has been in the public domain?
Well, we have been trying to reach out, just like we are reaching out now.
So
If you have seen,
We saw an advert in the paper
Yes.
yesterday, Caxton. Let's just get serious on this. And the advert in the paper yesterday did not mention anything about mobile phones. It was saying you need to log on to iTax. And when you log on to iTax, you register yourself for this tax, and then you shall now be declaring on that iTax platform. Now, when you talk about traders telling you, really, we don't want to have a long and tedious process, that right there is a long,
it's a long and tedious process.
Because you're telling Mama Mboga, log on to iTax. What is iTax? First of all, get onto the internet, log on to iTax, register yourself, and then every month go and file these returns, and then you shall be submitting that. That advert, as late as yesterday, did not have the new information you're saying, unless this is breaking news.
Don't worry.
Oh, they're worried.
I want to appeal to our taxpayers that and inform them that this is really coming. I mean, the app is under testing. The USSD is also under testing, and it shall be released before the end of the month.
So the question that I'll ask you when we come out of this quite short break is, you knew that you were going to be implementing this tax as late as when the president signed the law last year in October. And even before that, you had a full year where you were preparing, and I'm sure the National Treasury is the one that was campaigning to have this TOT reintroduced. Yet you had not worked on any mobile platform until now. In January is when you're working on a mobile platform, and it will not be ready. And I can guarantee you it will not be ready and people made aware of how this thing works by the 20th of February. Surely, what does this say about KRA's seriousness in rolling out this tax? This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 8 minutes to 8 o'clock. We have in the studio Caxton Masudi. He's a KRA Deputy Commissioner in charge of Policy and Tax Advisory. We're discussing the new turnover tax. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Caxton Masudi, Deputy Commissioner for Policy and Tax Advisory at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Tell us, how long did KRA have to prepare itself to roll out this turnover tax?
First, I think I need to respond to the comments that you made earlier. We cannot anticipate law. We have to wait until Parliament tells us what is chargeable to tax and how it shall be collected. Now, the administrative part is our responsibility. So when Parliament passed this law, we started off planning on how to go about collecting it. And we have put in place a lot of measures to ensure that this tax comes in. From stakeholder engagements, we have met the people that will be affected by this tax. We have met government institutions that will assist in collection of this tax, including representatives of county governments. We have been working on the systems, and we wouldn't have deployed the iTax module that will enable us collect these taxes if we have not been preparing. And now, just as an announcement, is that the mobile app is also coming.
Also coming.
Yes.
So first of all, I'd like to respond to that because you are responding. So right of reply, you may not anticipate tax, but this was not an initiative of Parliament. This was an initiative of the government. The government here being the National Treasury. So the National Treasury had been working on reintroducing turnover tax. It knew this. This matter, when it went to Parliament as a peace bill for legislation, it was, of course, supported by the National Treasury. KRA, that falls under the National Treasury, must have been aware that turnover tax. You're the head of tax advisory. You cannot tell me, Caxton, this morning that you did not know about this tax until you heard about it from the media, that the president has signed a new law. You must have known about this.
That's not what he said.
What is he saying, City?
At least that's not what I heard. You see, he may have known about it, but there's a process that Parliament must go through.
Yep.
And before that is concluded, there's very little they as KRA can actually do.
They cannot start preparing? They can.
Well, they can prepare, but remember, what are you preparing for? These things have details attached to them. Why am I talking as though I work for KRA?
I don't know. I'm really wondering, City, what's happening here.
You're talking because you are a Kenyan and you appreciate
Okay.
what KRA does.
There's a rider for UCT. But in all of this, how does all of this play against what we've seen previously, that there is a mandate for KRA to collect in terms of funds by a certain time? I mean, we're looking at huge numbers that you need to collect. It seems that there's then all this is fought with much vigor. It seemed to be welcome because then it gives you, an added advantage then in the percentages that you must collect.
Yes. We're targeting 2.4 million Kenyans to contribute to the national development. And we are expecting in the first 6 months, because, the fiscal year ends in June 30th. So
where you have targets.
Yes, we have targets. And we're expecting about 2 billion shillings from this.
In the first 6 months?
Yes.
And then when or if this should not happen, what happens? Because a lot of times we've seen when there have been pronouncements of punitive measures to be taken on people who don't pay tax, this and this or the other thing will be done. Are we going to see a rollout of that as well?
First and foremost, I don't think that that should be our focus. Our focus would be to assist everyone who is willing to pay their taxes.
So it's about willingness.
Yes.
It's not. So this tax is not being forced.
No country has successfully collected taxes by forcing people. When you go to every country that have made significant contribution and have developed, you realize that their taxpayers pay taxes voluntarily. And so is in Kenya. I mean, if over 90% of our taxes are paid voluntarily, we expect that even this tax will be paid voluntarily.
But if it's not, you'll be fined.
There are measures and provisions in law to enforce against people who don't pay taxes. But those measures are used only for the few that are not compliant. But even then, we would want to see a situation whereby we will not be using those measures in this case.
I hear you saying that KRA then is your friendly tax collecting government agency. That's what I hear you saying. How then do you relate this with the perception that many people have of the opposite?
I don't know where this perception is coming from, really.
But it's true, it's there, right?
It might be historical.
It's from the treatment, yes.
But I think if you have been following KRA, if you have been following the business community, they have actually been posting in report after report that payment of taxes in Kenya is becoming more convenient and it is improving the ease of doing business. So you may probably be interested in getting the World Bank indices of doing business, the ease of doing business.
Globally,
and you see
globally,
that
Caxton,
the
it'll have
taxpayers are
Of
appreciating.
course, they're going to say.
It'll have that, at a global level, it'll look like that. But then when people on the ground are saying, now, look, how KRA treats people, how KRA approaches businesses and finds out whether you've been complying with paying tax. And then you find because of lack of awareness, for many cases, the feedback is because of lack of awareness of what I'm supposed to pay, when I'm supposed to remit. I registered a company. I have not operated this company, but I registered for VAT. I was supposed to have been filing VAT returns every 20th. Lack of information, lack of awareness. When the officers from KRA come and tell you, here you have a company you should have been remitting, you owe us 120,000 shillings, the language is not that conducive. Apologies for that. It's actually because we've got into 8 o'clock. Let's first take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we continue with the conversation. And of course, the conversation is with Caxton Masudi, who is the Deputy Commissioner, Policy and Tax Advisory at the Kenya Revenue Authority. It's 8 o'clock.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic.
Definitely trying to take a look at what's happening on our roads this morning. We definitely have the traffic situation on Langata Road this morning. It is not as smooth as we had anticipated it to be. It's bumper to bumper all the way down to the T-Mall roundabout. Of course, that leads us on to Wayaki Way and further down to Bagathi Way roundabout to the City Mortuary roundabout. That is not moving in the way we'd like it to. Of course, we have the situation that's spilling on over to Thika Road, whereby matatus around the Mwiki area are on strike and residents are having to walk. Thika Road from Utali to Muthaiga, it's a parking lot, unfortunately. Nothing is moving. Of course, we are right in the middle of traffic hour. Accident at Mtindwa near the Caltex flyover this morning. Please use a service lane if you're coming from Mbakasi, because if you use the other road, you're going to go right into the traffic, or rather into the accident situation. All right, coming off Wayaki Way is a little bit better now as what we had seen earlier, and to get into the CBD, not so bad. All right, let's see what it looks like in a short while, but for now, this is where we are. Mombasa Road also getting us to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout is going to take some time, and it will stave off in a short while. Spice FM KE on Twitter, 0719 012 600. Call us. Let's get people moving.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in
The
punching up.
conversation continues. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have CT Muga, Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Caxton Masudi, who is a Deputy Commissioner in charge of Policy and Tax Advisory at the Kenya Revenue Authority. We're discussing turnover tax and basically just taxation and revenue collection by the government. I was at the point of making the point that there are people who, you may say they are few, but there are those actually that complain that KRA is draconian in the way it approaches people, in how it handles people who are, well, they're willing to pay tax, but for one reason or the other, they have not complied. There is arrests, there is denial of tax compliance certificate or withdrawal of PIN. Somebody has, has a company that's operating and they're running a business.
Freezing your account.
Freezing of accounts. These things, why must KRA go into such great lengths for even what we may call a first-time offender?
First, I won't say that that is not our emphasis. Our emphasis is in facilitating taxpayers. And you need to appreciate that we have put into place a network. We have put into place tax service centers, offices all over the country. We are at Huduma centers, just to ensure that everybody who needs information on how to pay their taxes, their tax obligations, are facilitated. Now, for those who have challenges, we have taken measures to relieve them of the challenges that they may be having. Because some of the problems that Kenyans have been having is that they have gone into the system and committed to pay taxes for which they are not supposed to be paying. Mistakes. Like you log into the system and say you want to pay VAT,
Income tax.
You want to pay income tax, excise, and so on. You don't have an excise factory. Now, the system anticipates that when you log into the system and give yourself an obligation, you are supposed then to respond to the requirements of that obligation. Like for every month, it expects a return. But what we've been doing is that we have actually been relieving and assisting those people come out of those kind of challenges. And it's available. We've done adverts in the media telling them, please come forward. Number two is that where persons are not able to meet their tax obligations, especially where they had errors in computing their taxes and discovered later that they have a big amount of arrears, KRA has been offering them a payment plan. They can pay these taxes over a period, 6 months, 3 months, 12 months. This is available to people who have challenges. We know that in some cases, people don't pay taxes not because they don't want to pay, but because probably they omitted an interpretation of the law here and there.
Yeah.
And this is given. So there are those who come voluntarily and say, I made a mistake, I ought to have paid 1 million, I paid 200,000. We tell them, okay, fine, go ahead and pay. Then they say, no, I can't pay 800,000 at once. Can you give me 2 months? And they are given. So this is how we have been facilitating taxpayers to pay their taxes. Number two, every company that is registered in this country and goes into business is given a PIN. In real time.
Yeah.
You get two things at the same time. You get certificate of registration and you also get a PIN. And you get invited to KRA premises in the succeeding month for you to be sensitized on obligations of paying taxes, so that you do not have the disadvantage of not understanding your obligations and requirements. And they will tell you this. They receive invites from KRA. Please come, we tell you. And by the way, if you open a business and you do not start transacting immediately, right? Because it is possible that you open a business, you register a company, and then you are not able to start business immediately.
Yep.
You don't have to pay taxes. All you need to do is to come to KRA and make an application for you to be put on dormancy until such a time when you are ready to do business. And these are some of the people who have been having problems.
Of course.
Because they register companies, they register for PIN, they give themselves obligations, and they just
And
go.
then they don't start the business.
They don't start the business.
And then a year later, penalties and arrears. Now, you say that when somebody registers a company, they get a PIN and they're immediately invited. So do you have like a percentage of the number of people whom you issue PINs to, and they follow up with coming for those trainings in the subsequent months? Like, do you know, we've invited 50,000 people who are new applicants, and only 10,000 came, or 50,000 came, or 1,000 came?
I may not have the statistics here, but the turnout is usually very good. The turnout
Estimation
is usually very good.
Over 50%, 90%?
Over 90%.
Over 90% of people who actually have registered new companies now are aware of their tax obligations.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
And those that had registered before and they still have dormant companies,
we reach out to them. We have a very elaborate arrangement that looks at people who have registered and they are not responsive. Means they are not filing returns or they are not paying taxes. And through our tax service offices, we reach out to them because we want to ask them, where are you? What happened to you? Can we help you if you have a problem to pay your taxes? Okay? And we do that. They will tell you that KRA officers call them and, we send them SMSs, we send them emails.
They'll say that, and then they tell you when a KRA officer called them, the first thing that they felt was, oh my goodness, what have I done
What
now?
have I done?
Actually,
And the kind of engagement that you've had with the KRA officer is towards the very end is when this person becomes amiable and amicable. But at the very beginning, it is not an amicable conversation that you're having.
When a commissioner, when you explain it, it's so pleasant. It's like a lullaby.
Honestly, it
sounds
sounds like
like
KRA
a
is your
different
friendly
organization.
agency.
Yes, and it runs
sounds
contrary,
so great.
Not to my own experience, but the things I hear don't quite align themselves to what you're saying. So the question I'm asking is this: the officers who implement these policies, do they understand these things like you do, and do they actually strive to achieve these goals that KRA has in the same manner, using the same platform that you're describing?
Yes, they should be as good as I am.
There's the word, though. They should be, but in reality,
I believe they are. They are.
Feedback from the ground, because what you're giving is actually that
is
feedback.
different. Yes,
And it's different. If you go even into social media platforms and you find people talking about their relationship with KRA, it will be completely different from what you're saying. There are many who will say, they've had very, very acrimonious engagements with KRA officers. Those that have taken themselves to KRA officers because they received a call, come because we are seeing in the system there are some arrears that you have. Go to the system, go to KRA offices, and they spend 2 days trying to sort out a problem because they've been sent from one officer to another officer, and the officers are just looking at them like, you're bothering me. That kind of engagement, that kind of
But the one which
perception.
I've heard more often is where there's an issue of arrears from the KRA end, but the person who is supposed to be in arrears is actually not consulted. What they receive is a letter informing them that their account has been frozen because of these arrears. Yes. So now they have to try and prove that actually this money was paid through an agent, namely a bank, and maybe it's the bank who didn't perhaps remit. The arrears may be real. So my query is, shouldn't KRA take the time to actually investigate why this arrear actually present themselves as they are before taking the punitive action, which I believe is prescribed for somebody who hasn't paid?
Now, I think I will better take you through the process. First, I want to say that do not ever run away from a KRA officer.
when the guy is chasing you, when you're being chased,
Do not ever run away
scary.
from a KRA officer. When you see them coming around, they are coming to offer you a solution to your problem. They are coming to give you alternatives to you settling your tax arrears or even understanding your taxes. We would like to walk around and say, yes, you are welcome. And the question we want to always ask is, how can we help you sort out your problem? Now, for enforcement to kick in, it takes a very long time, takes a lot of engagements. First, even before we issue an assessment where we think taxes have not been paid, we don't give you an assessment. We give you a notice to issue an assessment. Means we tell you, we got this information about your business and it does not tally with your declarations. And therefore, can you tell us why? Even before we issue the assessment. So when you give an explanation or you consent that, yes, that information was missed in your return, you first have the option of amending the return yourself and making the right declaration. If you don't, we will issue an assessment. Okay? Now, when we issue an assessment, we give you 30 days to respond. And if you don't respond, we confirm.
The assessment.
Yes, the assessment. And then you again have 30 days to object. An objection means you come back to KRA and say, yes, I have received this assessment. I don't think it is right.
I still disagree.
This is my evidence. You know, I don't agree with this. This is my evidence. And we have to review it. And we have an independent office. In fact, you don't go and face the same person who issued the assessment. You go and face an independent officer, separate from the one who issued you an assessment, so that your treatment is fair.
Okay. Caxton, why is this sounding so very good on paper and different from what City is saying? He has heard of this.
No, I actually know. This is not I have heard. I actually know.
Even something as simple, then if it's a friendly, if it's a relationship whereby we're saying that, okay, you have this problem, come, let's sit. Then why do we have things like the freezing of accounts? Something like that. Just that alone. Why do we have the freezing of accounts? Because what that does then is it disables businesses. People then are not able to run. Even while we're having the conversation, I'm still handcuffed. I'm handcuffed and we're having a conversation and I've been condemned. Punitive measures have been taken against me. I cannot operate, but we're still saying we're having a conversation and we're trying to make it easier for you. Do you not see that it's two different worlds that are at play here?
Now,
based on what you're saying and what the reality is for very many people.
In conclusion of my, submission, you need to appreciate that it is only in the extreme cases of people who probably don't respond, people who refuse to comply, that such kind of action is taken. And there are not so many. There are actually very few. Probably it's only the concern is probably they are very loud also. And maybe people, that kind of action is, publicized much more widely than all the good things that KRA is doing. But I know it's quite painful for those that are affected, but you also appreciate that as a tax authority, where all measures have been put in place and actions taken to facilitate you to pay taxes have been made, and yet you do not respond. I mean, the law then has enabled the tax authority to take those actions, to recover tax.
Can I ask the next question? Is there a division within KRA where if what we clearly now see is an anomaly happens, one can actually directly complain to and say, look, your rules say this, but this is what's happening to me.
This is what I got.
This is what happened. This is what I'm experiencing even right now, and here's the evidence of what I'm experiencing.
Oh, that happens in all our processes. During the notice of assessment, after the assessment, even when that kind of action has been taken against you, you still have an opportunity to use our alternative dispute resolution mechanism, where there's an independent person, you walk there and say, I want this matter to be heard in a very informal way, because an ADR process, the alternative dispute, is not like a court of law. I mean, any person can walk in there. You don't probably even require representation. You simply walk in there and say, this is my evidence. I think this action taken by your officers is not in tandem with the law, and it will be reviewed.
Over what period of time?
And I want to, it is reviewed within a maximum of 90 days.
And which means that if you had frozen my account remains frozen for 90 days.
Your company is paralyzed for 90 days.
And now, when you take that kind of action and goodwill is detected, usually we do not wait for the matter to be resolved. The account can actually be unfrozen because you have engaged positively.
So pending determination,
yes,
you can be allowed to continue operating.
Yes. And that happens all the time.
There are those that have gone to KRA offices, still looking at feedback from social media platforms, those that have gone to KRA offices and said, I am objecting to what you're talking about. And then the first thing the officer says is, this is what I have in the system as arrears. Pay first. then tuongee. This happens all the time. Is that a policy? Is that what you're supposed to do? Is the officer actually now just being draconian? I just keep using that word.
That is not provided for in law, and I don't think our officers do that. What
They actually
happens?
do.
What
This
happens is
Maybe this is a point of information for you as well,
Yes,
Caxton, because it happens.
we appreciate this feedback really, and we will of course be checking again and again to see that there is compliance with policies and so on. But the most, if you walk into every KRA premise, yes, when the officer feels that the evidences you are providing are not helping in changing your tax position, because that also happens.
Yeah.
And largely because probably you don't understand the law, you don't know how tax is computed, you simply thought because you made this money, this would be probably, there is no tax. And then now the officer appreciates the law and is guiding you. You know, there would be reach a point when the officer will basically tell you that this is what the law says and this is how you want to comply. You have to comply. And the officer then is mandated to take the next step to communicate to you the position as interpreted in accordance with the law. Sometimes you may not still agree with the officer's position. And that's why the dispute resolution mechanisms then kick in. Because the officer has to make a decision.
Yeah.
And they have to make a decision in accordance with the law.
With the law. So this is the point when the officer is basically saying, well, Sasa, you've talked. In conclusion, pay.
Pay, and then we talk.
If you want us to talk further, pay.
I think we'd be interested to know what supersedes the other. The collection, because obviously, you are the collection arm of the government when you look at that in terms of, if we're going to look at the nitty-gritty, what overrides the other? The protection of the people in terms of their interests in doing business or, contributing to the national kitty, or the mandate that you have been given to collect?
We have a responsibility as KRA. Every institution of government is given its mandate. And ours is very simple. Mobilize revenue to government through taxes. And we just have to execute it the way Parliament and government directs us to do.
So you don't have a choice in this case then when it comes to some of these collections and what Eric has constantly called draconian ways of doing things. You don't have a choice when it comes to this.
We do not have a choice where the law has specifically instructed us on what to do. But in terms of ensuring that the persons who pay taxes in this country appreciate tax, we have put in place administrative measures just to make sure that, yes, it is an obligation.
Yeah.
It is a requirement of the law. You must pay tax. There is no ignorance in law. You appreciate all these things. But even though that's how law is interpreted, we have gone out of our way to put into place mechanisms that ensures that there is comfort in payment of taxes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You sit at a very precarious position here, Caxton, because as KRA, your mandate, as per law, is to collect taxes. As citizens, our mandate is to pay taxes, and then there's a government that goes to use the taxes. Now, when people feel that what they are paying for, they're not getting value for it. So, for example, we've seen day 4 of demonstrations in Mwiki. People are complaining about roads that haven't, been addressed for so long. They are day 4 of demonstrations. If the people of Mwiki woke up today and decided, you know what, we don't see where our taxes are going, we are not going to pay, what do you do?
Would you fault them?
I think that is supposed not to be directed to the tax authority.
You're the one who's collecting.
That is supposed to be directed to the people who are supposed to implement those kind of programs. You please appreciate that care is on the other side, this other side. And
I started with saying that you sit in that position because you're the one who's going to come to me to ask for my tax. And I'll tell you, I am not giving you a shilling, Caxton. Look at that road. What do you do?
But you need to appreciate one thing, that there are mechanisms and ways of addressing different issues. You do not break one law to have your voice heard. I think the Those people have representatives, they have MCAs, they have parliamentarians, they have local administrations. They can always be heard in a different way. Failing to pay to pay taxes imposed under legal obligation would again complicate things for you.
Essentially, you're saying they'll be breaking the law, and that's they've brought in a new dimension and a new discussion.
Yes, I believe that they have other ways of addressing the challenges that they are facing.
Let me ask the question that I've been actually wanting to ask. I'm listening to you, and everything you say makes sense. Why is it then that prior to your coming here, we didn't understand all these things? Does KRA actually have a good policy of ensuring that they communicate these things? Because as you say them, they're really clear, straightforward. And because we're in the media, we tend to be fairly well informed. And some of this information we actually didn't have.
Well, I think I will take that as feedback to our tax education team.
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
I think
let's talk actually about that tax education team, because we've discussed this even on this show many times before. One of the things that people tell you about is, I'm willing to pay my taxes, but I am not aware. I don't have the information. You say that the tax education, you conduct clinics at KRA headquarters, at KRA offices. What other way have you thought of, using to reach out to people to create more awareness? You're telling me to close my business so that I can come to KRA, so that I can understand how KRA works. You need to come to me so that you can understand how I work. How do you strike that balance?
We are here. We are talking to the public, right? and I'm happy that your listeners are appreciating, how KRA can facilitate them to pay taxes. We have even had plans to start tax education in schools. And we are going right there, so that as they come of age, they appreciate that they have an obligation for them to contribute to national development. We of course are exploring many ways of reaching out. We are in social media. KRA is in social media.
Yeah.
Probably what we are saying here is also being
tweeted.
tweeted.
You have an active social media account, yes.
Yes, that is to reach out to the youth. We try all manner of ways to reach out to our taxpayers.
Right. One thing that I think is extremely important is that, I hear you on what you said. However, the image out there of what people are saying is not the very best. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. What would you do to kind of clean that up? Because, you've put it out as, the neighborhood, hand-holding tax collector, and that has been very clear. But what people have in their mental image of KRA is different, between like night and day. So in order to get this voluntary or continuous voluntary giving of or paying of taxes, the image definitely needs to be cleaned up. The image that people perceive. How would you do that?
I think first and foremost is to ensure that we live up to what we call the taxpayers' charter. We have committed to provide services within specific time frames. You ask for TCC, we say it is 2 days. You ask for something else, we say it is 1 week. So this is our agreement that we have offered as a standard for us to serve the public. Number two is what we are doing is to ensure that people have information, adequate information, for them to pay their taxes. So basically, two major areas: service quality and information will help us come out of it. And we are on it. And we are tracking all the feedback, all the indicators from the public to ensure that we achieve these objectives.
Right.
And much more important is we are continuously engaging representative institutions of taxpayers, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, KEPSA, small traders associations, everyone that gives us feedback, because we engage them and we ask them, what do you want to change?
Right.
How do you want us to serve you? How best would you feel comfortable being served?
Right.
And that feedback is continuously being used to improve our processes and our systems. Yes.
How do you deal with corruption within KRA? It's obviously something that has come up as well. How are you dealing with that?
Yes. For quite some time, probably KRA can pride itself for having its own mechanism for addressing integrity issues among the staff. And we have our full-fledged department whose responsibility is always to ensure that we do not breach the law, we officers do not engage in, integrity issues, and we have always been isolating persons that do not meet our standards of service. People have integrity issues, and some of them have ended up in court, others have lost their jobs, and we also have a mechanism to continuously monitor the performance.
How many have ended up in jail?
In jail.
Conviction, as you may appreciate, is not a process of the prosecutor. Conviction is a process of the other side. There's somebody who sits on the other side. And we must appreciate the judiciary processes as well. I mean, you present a suspect to court, the court determines when the case will be heard and when it will be concluded. So, yes, there have been convictions in the past, but we still have a significant number of officers.
Ongoing cases.
Significant number of ongoing cases.
This internal system that you've mentioned, is it the one that brought in the DCI in what we saw last year, the purge within the KRA? Or was this a DCI instigated move?
You need to appreciate that in as much as we have internal mechanisms, the other agencies of government still hold their mandates, still reserve their mandates to do the actions that they did. And DCI on his own has the mandate to take that kind of action.
Then looking at the number of people that DCI came, investigated and arrested and the DPP took to court, and all those measures taken, isn't that an indictment to your own internal system, that your internal system had actually not been able to detect all these cases? Or had detected them but then was letting them stay?
If you follow the statistics, I think we have offloaded more than that number in terms of persons found with wanting integrity.
Over time.
It takes us back to the same issue of communication or education, as you call it. You see, if we who are supposedly in a position to be well informed are not well informed about these things, which are actually good and for our benefit, how much more ignorant do you think the general public is? And yet, there's all this good. In this case, I would argue good that is being done but is unknown might as well not exist.
I think you are asking me or asking KRA to pull up their socks in information sharing.
Precisely.
100%.
Precisely.
We have been sharing a lot of information. Probably
it's the way perhaps we even share it. They're sharing it, yes. There are all these projects one hears of this and this, machinani, this and this. Given that everyone in this country pays tax, whether you know it or not, but you do, surely KRA should perhaps take this particular duty a little more seriously. Than they currently do.
Without appearing to be defending KRA, the feedback that we get through the various indicators, World Bank, ease of doing business, is showing that our services are improving, and we have assisted Kenya climb up the ladder of the ranking of the ease of doing business.
This is the same World Bank that advised the government to sell their houses. Same World Bank. This is the same World Bank who 20 years ago informed us that we were going to be a failed state within a period of same World Bank, or is this a different World Bank?
We also, from the feedback we are getting from the representative organizations, they are also telling us it is getting better.
Do you conduct actually your own independent polling to find out this is what the people are saying, this is the feedback, this is the perception that the public has about KRA?
Yes, and it is getting better.
It seems like it's all very rosy where you're sitting.
It is getting better.
Getting
But
better.
we are getting better every other day. And we take even the feedback that you are giving me here. We will of course go and discuss it and see whether you as a media house can help us with more information about areas of pain to our taxpayers.
Caxton Masudi is the Deputy Commissioner in charge of Policy and Tax Advisory at the Kenya Revenue Authority. We'll open up the phone lines now, 0719-012-600. I'm sure there are very many people who would have one or two things to tell Caxton or to ask Caxton. Now, we'll take those calls immediately after we take a look at what's happening on the roads at 27 minutes to 9 o'clock.
Spice FM, Nyeri. Traffic.
All right, heavy traffic on Mombasa Road this morning, of course, trying to leave Mlolongo and coming past the SGR. There's a serious problem there. It seems to be the case every morning where the road narrows and then opens up later, and we see it opening up right around GM. So there's some traffic there that you definitely will experience. Of course, we still have the perennial problem that is Thika Road. Everywhere else seems to be moving quite smoothly right around now. Unfortunately, Komarok Road to Kariobangi is bumper to bumper, coming off of Thika Road and then trying to join into the CBD, not happening as clear as we would like it to. Gong Road, it definitely is going to need some patience. It's moving, but moving extremely slowly this morning. Langata Road jam from Galleria Mall. Of course, the question is, what exactly is going on? Everybody's on the roads this morning trying to get where they're going. You're going to have to exercise some patience while getting there. Traffic hour is almost over, so let's see what happens in a short while. Spice FM KE 0719-012-600. Tell us what you see. Let's see how we can keep people moving, won't you?
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Conversation continues. You've opened up the phone lines 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Any question for KRA Deputy Commissioner in charge of Policy and Tax Advisory, Caxton Masudi. Lydia in Nairobi. Good morning, Lydia.
Spice FM, thank you for this good dialogue with each other. We don't need demonstrations to bring violence. We need to talk to each other as friends.
Thank you,
What
Lydia.
I wanted to say is taxes are important. Otherwise, the country cannot be managed. But what I'm trying to say is our good President Kibaki made the government small. And he told the Safaricom, Airtel, they should not be charged 6 billion license. Now, that is a heavy weight on us. That is also like a tax. And now recently you are charging a tax on airtime, 10%. And there are so many cartels coming in for tax to charge a kind of a tax. Now even the city counties, you pay one license. When you go to Old Kalau or Nakuru, Limuru, where's your license to do work here? You go to Kisumu, where's your license? And when I was at United Business Association, I was at Kenya School of Monetary Studies speaking that, and Treasury said you pay one license to do work all over Kenya.
All over the country.
But this has changed. So there are so many cartels demanding taxes in the form of license, in the form of levies, in the form of parking. So these are very heavy weights to add to the
Lydia.
taxes.
Thank you, Lydia. We'll ask him that. Actually, Caxton also, she was talking about people feeling heavily burdened by overtaxation and very many levies around the country. You're the man, actually, to respond to this because you're in charge of tax advisory and policy.
First, I must say that if you compare Kenya with many other countries around the world, we don't necessarily have the highest tax burden. Yes, Kenyans may be saying that they would have preferred fewer taxes, but these are proposals that can find their way into government, into parliament, and you need to appreciate that the public feedback, proposals and requests from Kenyans is always taken into consideration in every budget cycle. But I just want to dissuade us from believing that Kenya has the highest tax burden.
There are those that have said Kenya operates without a tax policy. Is this true? Do we have a tax policy in place? Is it important?
Maybe that may not be true. I mean, you cannot come up with tax policies without having a policy. Probably what people would be saying is there have been tax policies addressing specific issues, and probably what we need now is an overall tax policy, in one document, instead of having them in multiple documents.
Yeah. And is it important to have that?
Yes, and I want to say that the National Treasury is actually working on that.
How long before we see it coming to life?
I may not be able to speak for the National Treasury.
We are taking more calls from you, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600, because we have on the hot seat this morning the Deputy Commissioner for KRA in charge of Policy and Tax Advisory, Caxton Masudi. As I get this call to be vetted by our producer, this is Sammy on the line. Let me ask you this question, just taking us back to the turnover tax. So we have the turnover tax and we have the presumptive tax. Same small businesses, when they go to apply for a license with a local council, they pay a tax. And now you're telling them to pay another tax. Is this double taxation? How do you explain that?
No, it's not double taxation. Presumptive tax feeds into turnover tax. And let me explain this. Presumptive tax is charged as a percentage, actually 15% of the license fees levied by the county governments. So what happens is that becomes an advance tax to turnover tax. Now, if you paid, for example, 5,000 shillings as a presumptive tax this month, when you come to make your return for turnover tax by the 20th of February, the 5,000 is available to you as credit. If, for example, your turnover tax for the month of January, payable by the 20th of February, will be 10,000, then you will only pay 5,000, because the 5,000 you paid as presumptive tax becomes a credit.
Is presumptive tax monthly or annual?
If, for example, it is less than 5,000 that you paid as presumptive tax, say 3,000, the turnover tax computed 3,000, you will still have balance of 2,000 as a credit to offset again in the month of March. Yes, until you exhaust that, that's when now you start paying the additional turnover tax. So there is no double taxation.
Going back to the lines, Dennis in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? What's your question for Caxton?
Oh, it wasn't a question, but a message.
Yeah, I think what we need right now in Kenya is a free life. Like, we're so tired with all this frustration that we are going through. You know, I'm still a youth, but I'm tired living in Kenya because of all this frustration happening in the government. Hello?
So yes. you want what? You want tax holiday?
No, it's not about tax holiday. The thing is, all these rules that are being brought up daily, like every day, you know, like, it's making living in Kenya a very hard task. Like, it's like you have to go through a lot of process.
Are you employed or are you in self-employment?
No, I'm employed, like, just a hustler, actually.
You are employed in the industry of hustling?
Yeah, not in the industry of hustling, but I'm employed in a way that I have to do, I go through a lot of
things to survive.
So all these taxes that we speak of add to the burden that you already have.
Okay, I don't know if you're getting my point actually.
Yes, I'm getting. Do we understand you to be saying that these taxes are too many?
No, I'm not saying these taxes are too many,
Yes.
but actually they are. But what I'm trying to say is that let them stop frustrating us, because we are being frustrated by these people.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you're getting
Which
the point.
people are you speaking of, sir?
KRA?
I'm talking about the KRA, yeah.
Okay.
And how exactly are they frustrating you?
Come on, it's always in the news. You see them every day.
Okay.
Sami in Magarini, good morning.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Good
morning.
Good morning, Sami.
Yes, I have two questions for the visitor. Yes, one question is, how do they ensure that those people who are owning big businesses, they adhere to the rules that they have to use that machine? Whenever they give a receipt, they have that machine. And how do they ensure that we people, ordinary people, know that we have to be issued with the receipt so that those money go to the necessary coffer, please?
All right. So to ensure that big businesses that are registered for VAT actually use the ETR machine, right? That's the question he's asking. We're going to pick one more, then you can respond to them. We have, I think, Mohammed, who's shortly on the line. John, is Mohammed ready? Right. Maybe Caxton, you can respond to those two.
I think when it comes to large corporations, companies, we still use the same arrangements to ensure that they pay their taxes. One of the ways is that they are aware about their responsibilities, they understand the law. That is education. Number two is that when in terms of VAT, to ensure that companies declare the correct amounts of VAT, we have various ways. Number one is that we first of all also be educating the public to ensure that they ask for a receipt anyway. So I think what some should be knowing is that when you buy goods, as a patriotic responsibility, you should insist on having a VAT fiscal receipt or an ETR issued receipt. But in the event that they are not complying, we have also the issue of enforcement, where we have teams of officers going outside there and identifying persons that are not charging VAT where they are required to charge VAT. Then we have something we rolled out, which it's a discussion for another day. The issue of value VAT automated assessments, where a person claiming VAT must have a corresponding invoice to corresponding declaration that supports a claim of VAT. And in this, we have flashed out a lot of people who have been cheating on VAT and actually recovered more than 3 billion shillings just in the last 1 year.
So these are people who are claiming VAT that they hadn't.
Yes, they hadn't paid.
It's catching the cheats.
Yes, it is actually cutting the cheat. So it's working. And we are also now in the process of upgrading the ETR regime to ensure that every receipt issued, the information is relayed to the tax authority, expeditiously through a remote connection. And then that, again, will make us avoid this issue of people saying they have issued a receipt, and at the end of the month, they do not tell us.
Yeah.
They don't declare that sale.
Let's go back to the lines. Musa in Nairobi. Good morning, Musa.
Good morning to you. How are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Yes, I have a question about the VAT.
Yep.
Because wherever other organizations are charged with VAT, they push it to the customer. which is the VAT that is supposed to go to the customer and to the person who is pushing it to the customer. Because this is why you see people are making noise. Every place you are paying tax, every purchase, everything you do, you are paying tax, and there is nobody who is recognizing that it is you
who paid the tax,
who is paying all these taxes.
Answer that.
I think to just appreciate, VAT is a consumption tax, just as excise is a consumption tax. Consumption taxes are paid by the final consumer. This is how it works. So what Musa is saying is true. I mean, they are the ones who pay taxes, but they should be proud that they are contributing to nation building.
I think it's very. The thing is, if I may just interject there, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for citizens to reconcile pride and patriotism when they are being pressed down at every side. And you've heard what he said. How do you reconcile the two? Whereby here, I'm trying to make this 10 shillings that I have work. You're taking 3%. I'm trying to feed a family. I'm trying to do those other things. And at the same time, you're asking me to be proud. How do we reconcile the two, really?
I think one of the things that needs to come out very clearly, every country is developed by contributions from their citizens and residents. This is a given thing. Those great countries you are hearing about, around the world, it is because of the contributions from their citizens. It is unfortunate that in some cases in Kenya, some sectors of our economy did not make this contribution. And maybe when you now tell them it is time for you to make a contribution, they find it a little bit inconveniencing, but it is a responsibility they need to live up to.
Okay, I understand. And when we asked this question previously, you said that, okay, well, you're not able to answer that because for you as KRA, what you're supposed to do is just, pick up the money. What is done with it after that is not within your purview. That's understood. Now, if you look around other countries in the world, which you've just given reference to, if they charge a higher tax, you can see the correlation between the charge of this tax and what is actually provided for the citizens, the services that are provided. Direct correlation. We'll give some examples of countries in other parts of the world. Sweden, for example. Norway, for example, charged up to 60% of their income as an example. But education is free until university.
Not just free, not free Kenyan style. It's really
it's
free.
really free.
You don't pay anything.
You literally, you don't, the road, the infrastructure is stellar. You don't have a problem until they're even able to feed people who are not able to earn a living on their own. The welfare system is impeccable. How then do we correlate? I know you said it's not within your purview, but then how do we correlate? How do we reconcile the two? And it must be something, because you talked about taking the interests of people to heart, when you make your recommendations. This must be one of the things that is brought into contention.
I think something has to come out here.
Yes.
In business, you start with an investment. You don't start with the dividends. These countries you are talking about, at one point, they were like us. But their citizens kept on contributing to develop those countries. And that's why the mobilization of revenue, is supposed to be a responsibility for each Kenyan, so that all these issues they are raising can be addressed. Because if you don't pay tax, how will the roads be fixed?
So what you're saying is that eventually these things will happen.
This is
keep the
only
faith.
way to go.
Keep the faith. Keep contributing your taxes.
Don't worry.
One day, we shall be able, Caxton will be able to collect revenue, and that revenue will be utilized.
And then he can even make recommendations to to Treasury and say, look here.
His point
based
is
on what we've collected.
His point is actually valid. You know why it's valid? It's because in the absence of that money, this non-performance of other arms of government is not as though it's going to improve if we have less taxes. So you do your bit.
Yep.
And then look for other mechanisms of ensuring that those are the
hold
things
the others
do their
accountable
bit.
for their bit.
Yes, but you do your bit. Don't stop doing your bit because somebody else is reneging on their bit.
And that's a very strong point. Thank you very much, Caxton. Thank you for joining us this morning, for answering our questions. Well, of course, we'll invite you again before the 20th of February so that you can teach the people how to use the mobile application on payment of the turnover tax. Thank you very much. We've been having on the hot seat Caxton Masudi. He's the Deputy Commissioner in charge of Policy and Tax Advisory at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Of course, we were talking about tax matters in general, and in particular, the new tax, the turnover tax. He says, of course, the first time that you should be paying for this is the 20th of February because it came into effect in January. We'll have you again soon, Caxton. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation, and the conversation continues on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, Instagram. Good morning.